Thank you, Judy, and thank you to everyone at the Radcliffe Institute. And I want to give a special thanks to my Radcliffe research partner, Harvard senior Sally Yee. When I tell people that I'm writing a book about celebrity, they ask a lot of questions, but three crop up over and over again. The first is, what is a celebrity really? The second is, have celebrities always existed, or is there something radically new about our celebrity-crazed present? And the third is, why do so many people care so much about celebrities? These are the questions that I plan to answer today by sharing with you material from the introduction to my soon-to-be-completed book, The Drama of Celebrity. And in addition to sharing my research with you, I am going to ask you to be part of my research. So periodically, I'm going to pause to ask you questions. You are free, we are all free, not to answer them. If you want to answer them, you can write your answers on the pieces of paper that have been provided, along with what I have learned are called golf pencils. If you prefer to use your phone, judging from this crowd, I don't think that's likely, but if you're on Twitter, you can tweet your answers at me. This is my Twitter handle. That is my cat, who I have been trying and failing to turn into a feline internet celebrity. And this is my first question. Who is the first celebrity in whom you remember taking an interest? The answer is no one. Write down no one. And this is my answer to that question. So celebrity might seem like an odd topic for a professor of 19th century literature to tackle. But in my case, celebrity actually inspired my love of Victorian novels. So you see here the cover of the first grown-up book that I bought as a child. Not in this edition. I bought an English language edition. I wasn't that precocious. I found this book on the remainder table of a Barnes & Noble in Queens. I convinced my father to buy it for me. And reading this book, I learned many things. I learned that you can have 5 husbands and even marry the same person twice. I also learned that Elizabeth Taylor started out as a child star and played a small role in the 1941 film version of Jane Eyre. And since I was a child reading this book, I found that very interesting. A few years ago, when I saw Charlotte Bronte's novel on a shelf, I recognized the title from my Elizabeth Taylor phase, and I decided to try to read it. The rest was personal history. I fell in love with Victorian novels, but I never lost my interest in celebrity. So, to the first question that I said people commonly ask me, not the question I asked you to answer, what is a celebrity really? One reasonable definition of celebrity is anyone known during his or her lifetime to more people than could possibly know one another. By this definition, there have always been celebrities. Of course, the heroes and conquerors of antiquity were as preoccupied with achieving immortal fame as with being well known in their lifetimes. And similarly, the saints of the Middle Ages, though often popular figures while alive, were canonized only after their deaths. The use of the word celebrity to refer to people well known during their lifetimes first became common during the 18th century. When asked, have celebrities always existed, I answer that modern celebrity has existed for over 200 years. There is surprisingly little that is truly novel about our celebrity-crazed present. For me, this is a deeply historical point about continuities persisting over periods of significant change. And it means that if we want to understand how celebrity works, we have to turn to the moment when celebrity first acquired the global dimensions it enjoys today. The history of celebrity culture begins not with the internet, nor with film, but in the 18th century, when celebrity, the word, and its French equivalent célébrité, first began to acquire their modern meanings. Before the 18th century, a celebrity was a ritual festivity, the celebrities of weddings, funerals, the Sabbath. But in the middle of the 18th century, usage shifted. Celebrity was first something that one could have, both during one's lifetime and after one's death. So when the word originally came to be used commonly to refer to being well known, it wasn't distinguished that much from the notion of fame. An 18th century writer could and did refer to a cleric possessing oratorical celebrity, or to a future prime minister having obtained celebrity while an undergraduate at Oxford. Publishers began to cater to interest in the private lives of public figures. As Harvard English professor Deirdre Lynch and others have shown, 18th century books started to include frontispieces featuring portraits of authors, actors, and statesmen. Philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau published an autobiography in which he confessed to spanking fantasies and then complained that people were gossiping about him. Lord Byron, pictured here, wrote a confessional poem and then, as the saying went, woke up to find himself famous. In the 18th century, however, a fully fledged global celebrity culture had yet to emerge. Images remained time-consuming to produce and costly to purchase. Best-selling books often sold no more than a few hundred copies. Newspapers had circulations in the low thousands. Roads were improving and postal systems expanding, but information still took weeks to circulate within national borders, even longer across national lines. Only in the 1840s did a celebrity become something one could be. Instead of simply possessing celebrity as one trait among many others, celebrity became, for the first time in history, an identity. Who were these 19th century celebrities? How do they compare to the people that we consider typical celebrities today? Before I answer that question, another one for you. Name at least 5 living figures today, living figures, not just in our minds, whom you consider celebrities. When I participated a couple of years ago in a Reddit Ask Me Anything on the topic of celebrity, many of the hundreds of people who participated named Kim Kardashian as the epitome of contemporary celebrity culture. They also had nothing good to say about her. Famous only for being famous was a phrase that came up repeatedly, a phrase to which I will return towards the end of this talk. Their responses suggested that today, the word celebrity has quite negative connotations. For many people, the typical celebrity is someone who does not deserve the attention that we pay them. So this brings me to the second big question I'm so often asked. What, if anything, is new about today's celebrity culture? My answer is very little, except that for much of the 19th century, books and magazines equated celebrities with, quote unquote, distinguished individuals, renowned for their genius and strength of character. The 19th century celebrity was much more likely to be a man than a woman. There were female celebrities, but if you look at books about celebrities, men absolutely dominate the table of contents. And as likely to be a general, an archbishop, or a scientist as an opera singer or ballet dancer. In 1855, for example, a Boston minister published a book entitled Visits to European Celebrities. The figures he discussed included abolitionist William Wilberforce, pictured on the left, and scientist Alexander von Humboldt on the right. To be sure, then as now, celebrity had its seamy side. Writers in the 1840s referred to courtesans, for example, as celebrities of vice. But they had to qualify the word celebrity, celebrities of vice, to give the term a tawdry ring that at the time was not at all a given. 19th century books about celebrities featured figures such as Abraham Lincoln. Now, my point here is not a sensationalist one. Abraham Lincoln was nothing but a celebrity, but rather that for decades, the term celebrity typically included the most venerable figures. Figures such as Lincoln, who credited this photograph for helping him win the 1860 presidential election. Other 19th century figures referred to at the time as celebrities included, well, you can tell they're important because they have beards, included authors Alfred Lord Tennyson on the left and poet, politician, and novelist Victor Hugo on the right. An 1879 3-volume compendium entitled Celebrities at Home even included a profile of the Pope at the Vatican. And I don't know if you can read the table of contents, but those of you who could probably also be flying planes will be able to verify that here's an instance of many, many people being called celebrities, most of whom are male figures. Cardinal Manning, I'll read you, I can see it. Cardinal Manning, Dr. Pusey, also a cleric, Father Ignatius, Gambetta, who was an Italian nationalist, the list goes on. In most other respects, however, today's celebrity culture can be traced back to the 19th century. In 1968, Andy Warhol memorably referred to the future as a time, future being now, as a time when everyone would get their 15 minutes of fame. 19th century news cycles were slower, but journalists of the day similarly evoked 9-day wonders. Tie-in products and celebrity endorsements have existed for over 200 years. In the late 18th century, shops sold mugs, walking sticks, and figurines representing the theater stars of the day, such as these objects featuring actor David Garrick. A host of 19th century celebrities endorsed wigs, face creams, powders, pianos, and bottled water. Celebrity chefs. The 19th century already had its share, including Alexis Soyer, a French cook based in London who sold his own brand of kitchen gadgets and bottled sauces, whose labels, which you see here, pictured him wearing his trademark red beret. The late 20th century, celebrity-hosted telethons and star-studded concerts for charitable causes had their counterpart in benefits that 19th century performers regularly held for victims of fires, earthquakes, and in the example pictured here, those suffering from yellow fever. Celebrity activism. Sorry that this is a bit blurry. It's a newspaper photograph. There's only so big you can blow them up. In 1913, a half-century before country western singer Johnny Cash famously performed live at Folsom Prison, the legendary actress Sarah Bernhardt, pictured in the Napoleon hat, so she's in the dark jacket, she's actually not that easy to see, but she's on the far left, visited San Quentin prison. She's pictured here in a photograph whose frame was crafted by prisoners. Journalists reported that Bernhardt became pals with the convicts, one of whom recited a speech praising her wondrous personality and entrancing art for liberating the prisoners' souls and minds. A month later, the Star published an article in the Boston Globe making an impassioned plea to abolish the death penalty. Our fascination with the private lives of celebrities also has a longer history than we might expect. Stalkers have long existed. Actress Sarah Siddons, for example, complained of strangers forcing their way into her London drawing room. Figures as different as Queen Victoria and the local poet, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, allowed photographers to take, publish, and sell photographs of them with their families. Fan mail, too, is as old as the cheap postage rates that first democratized the mails in 1830s England and 1840s United States. Once sending letters became more affordable, celebrities found themselves deluged with requests for autographs. At one point, Longfellow received 400 of these a week. Actor Edwin Booth, the most renowned Shakespearean actor in the United States of his day and brother of John Wilkes Booth, received hundreds of letters begging him for photographs, free books, shoelaces, and lots of hair. Shoelaces. I've seen them. Not the shoelaces, but the letters asking for them. Some correspondents also sent him gifts, books, flowers, religious tracts, medical advice. Men asked for jobs and free acting lessons. Women, such as the Boston correspondent, whose letter is pictured here, proposed assignations. Before moving on to ask why celebrity culture took off when it did in the 1840s, I'd like to ask you to help me strengthen my claim about celebrity culture's 19th century affinities by challenging it. So this one I'm going to give you a little more time because it's a little more complicated. So what elements of recent celebrity culture would you argue are actually unique to the present? Okay, so feel free to continue writing, and of course you might have a brainwave later and you can add to your answer. So why did modern celebrity culture explode in the mid-19th century? Many reasons. To begin with, the rise of democratic movements in England, France, and the United States in the 1820s and 1830s transformed how individuals and collectives imagined themselves. Those movements played out differently in each country, but in each case, democratization made people eager to track current events that they saw themselves as shaping. Literacy increased, extending the number of people able to read about celebrities. Leisure expanded, affording more people more time to visit theaters, opera houses, and lyceums where they saw celebrities in person. As many cultural historians have noted, this period in Europe and the United States also gave rise to a new emphasis on individuality. The 19th century began by ushering in a romantic cult of genius, epitomized by our previous acquaintance, Lord Byron, and ended by worshiping the notion of personality, epitomized by Oscar Wilde. Indeed, in 1911, one could find a theater producer explicitly speculating that the star system loomed so large in the United States because Americans were what he called an individual-loving people. Catering to this interest in individuals was the burgeoning commerce in photographs. Around the 1860s, affordable celebrity portraits became widely available in shops and via mail order. In the 1890s, heavily illustrated niche magazines devoted to stage stars began to flourish. Here's an image drawn from one of them, anticipating the film magazines that first took off in the 1910s. Around the same time that there began to be a new value assigned to individuality, important transformations in the newspaper industry encouraged publishers to increase their coverage of celebrities. Until the 1830s, most newspapers in England, France, and the United States were costly publications, sponsored by wealthy patrons and read by a small select group of subscribers who received their papers through the mails. Starting in the 1830s, however, newspapers became more commercial, with entrepreneurs in all three nations producing papers that cost only a penny instead of the traditional 6 cents. Newspapers began to rely on advertisements, subscriptions, and daily sales, including street sales. Instead of targeting a select group of insiders willing to pay a high price for privileged, specialized information, newspaper publishers began to do a volume business, and so they had to appeal to general interests in an effort to reach the largest number of customers possible. As the number of commercial papers grew, competition for readers increased. More than influencing and leading the public, the commercial press needed to please it. Addressing journalism students in 1912, a newspaperman explained, "In publishing a newspaper, you endeavor to print what the people want to read." The people wanted to read about celebrities. An 1855 issue of the Illustrated London News, pictured here, featured what the caption refers to as chess celebrities. So micro-celebrities have been around for a long time, too. An 1862 issue of the Illustrated London News covering a royal marriage sold 930,000 copies, which was more than 3 times the paper's usual circulation rate. Articles about celebrities, especially when illustrated with lithographs and engravings, it wasn't really possible to incorporate photographs into newspapers until the 1890s, became a reliable way to boost circulation. In turn, celebrities themselves began to focus on newspapers as important organs of communication, even arguing with editors about their coverage. The actress Sarah Bernhardt, whom you saw earlier and who's one of the focal points of my book, was a ceaseless writer of letters to the editor, complaining about her coverage, contesting the facts of a story published the previous day, which of course was a great way to make the story have a new lease on life for a few more days. In 1829, 2 popular London actors sent letters to a newspaper addressed to the public in which they accused that newspaper of misrepresenting them. The editor published those letters to demonstrate his fairness, to avoid a libel suit, but also because the actors protesting their coverage were leading figures in London's theater scene and celebrity cells. At the very moment that newspapers first came to depend on large publics for their success, technological changes were making those publics larger than ever before. Some figures to give you a sense of the shifting scale of the newspaper reading public across the 19th century. In the 1820s, one of the best-selling Parisian newspapers of the moment had 16,000 subscribers. By 1865, the best-selling Paris daily was selling more than 250,000 copies a day. 15 years later, that number had more than doubled. Another technological development that was important was in transportation. Steamships and railways delivered publications to readers around the world with what was then unprecedented speed. By the 1860s, transoceanic telegraph cables enabled news to travel around the world instantaneously, or close to it. An actress could, as Sarah Bernhardt did in 1882, get married in London one day and have the news reported in Paris, Rio de Janeiro, and Chattanooga within a week. Beginning in the 1840s, steamships and railways also began to deliver celebrities themselves. In 1840, Austrian ballet dancer Fanny Elssler visited the United States. The next year, a steamship named after the celebrated ballerina, the Fanny Elssler, was plying the Atlantic. The ship familiarized the world with the celebrity dancer in person, and in turn, the celebrity dancer's name helped to familiarize the world with what was then a novel form of transportation. Authors and activists also took advantage of the new modes of travel, with many crossing the Atlantic to conduct readings and deliver lectures that were the 19th century versions of today's TED Talks. British author Charles Dickens, on the left, visited the United States in 1842. In 1845, abolitionist Frederick Douglass, on the right, spent over a year in England. 3 decades later, extensive railway networks enabled celebrities to visit not only a nation's major cities, but also its obscure nooks and crannies. In the 1870s and 1880s, actor Edwin Booth, whom you saw earlier, toured with Polish actress Helena Modjeska, and they performed in world theater capitals, Paris, London, Berlin, Warsaw, and New York, but they also visited small towns ranging from Davenport, Iowa, to Zanesville, Ohio, with stops in larger cities such as Indianapolis. A poster for one of their Indianapolis performances is pictured here. During one 1887 to 88 tour, Edwin Booth appeared in 72 towns. Performers spent so much time touring that actor Maude Adams, you saw her before with her long red hair, but she also played a lot of trouser roles, had sliding scenery installed on her customized train cars so that she and her troupe could rehearse while traveling. The 19th century's most renowned figures garnered kudos because they had talent, ambition, and understood how to capture the public imagination. But had they not come of age in an era that invented cheap postage rates, photography, the penny press, telegraphic news agencies, and steam and train travel, they never would have become global celebrities, because without those developments, global celebrity culture would not have existed. Until I began the research for this book, I thought, as many still do, that the film industry invented modern celebrity culture. But in fact, the Hollywood studio system was more of an exception than the rule. Far from creating the star system, 20th century movie studios simply adapted one that the theater had invented decades earlier. A global star system had already existed in theater in the 19th century. Indeed, star was a 19th century term coined in English, along with étoile and vedette in French, to designate a theatrical troupe's most compelling lead actors. As a young middle-class woman living in Glasgow announced in 1855, "Unless there is some star in the theater, we do not go." Plus ça change. And though we may now think of live theater as a niche form of entertainment, before the advent of film, theater reached millions annually. In 1865, London shows attracted almost 12 million viewers a year. In 1905, New York City alone had 18 million theater goers, and Chicago newspapers would publish articles claiming that their theater scene was even more lively and vibrant than New York's. Theatrical culture was also global. A play might open in London, then tour the entire United States, or start out in Paris and then be adapted for performance in Berlin, Stockholm, and New York. Not surprisingly, given the depth and breadth of the theatrical celebrity system, early film producers used established stage stars to lure people to the new medium of cinema. The famous 1896 Thomas Edison film, now known as The Kiss, was originally billed as The May Irwin Kiss because it featured well-known theater star May Irwin in a popular scene from her play The Widow Jones. The very term movie star arose because stars were presumed to belong to the theater. Many of the most famous early film producers, directors, and performers, from Lillian Gish to Barbara Stanwyck, started on the stage and often continue to shuttle between Hollywood and Broadway. Eventually, however, Hollywood did, for a few decades, change celebrity culture in at least one important way. In the 19th century, the biggest stage celebrities exercised significant autonomy. They had the power to choose their roles in most cases, unless they belonged to a national theater troupe, but those were the exception. They could control their schedules. They could select supporting casts. They designed costumes and sets. They leased and managed theaters, and they crafted their public personae. Now, a few important movie stars, such as Carole Lombard and James Stewart, who started in theater, were freelancers who retained some of the independence enjoyed by their theatrical predecessors. But in most cases, at the height of the Hollywood era, film studio heads effectively used restrictive contracts, well-oiled publicity departments, and their influence over the press to control what movie stars could do and what the public could learn about them. During the decades when, and these are some of the people you see pictured here, studio heads Louis B. Mayer, the Warner Brothers, and Harry Cohn, all notoriously dictatorial, even abusive, reigned supreme, many stars received orders about what roles to play, whom to date, how to dress. In exchange, they received the support of a powerful integrated entertainment industry. Those who balked, such as Bette Davis, Katharine Hepburn, Marilyn Monroe, often found themselves subject to retaliation, lawsuits, smear campaigns, and periods of unemployment. But the decline of the film studios in the 1960s, the breakdown of broadcast television that began in the 1980s, and the rise of the internet since the 1990s have in many ways returned celebrity culture to its 19th century roots. No single medium or industry today controls stars or stardom. So to recap the answers to the question, have celebrities always existed, or is there something new about today's celebrity culture? Modern celebrity culture first began to emerge in the 18th century and exploded in the 19th. A few features of celebrity culture have changed since the late 1700s. Everything moves faster today, and ways of engaging with celebrities that used to be more private, sending a fan letter, for example, can now be much more public. If you tweet at Beyoncé, all of her followers can see what you write. Throughout the 19th century, celebrity had more positive connotations than it does now, perhaps because a celebrity then was as likely or more likely to be a respected male scientist, statesman, or artist than a female performer. 19th century celebrities also had more autonomy and privacy than mid-20th century stars. But in most other respects, and in terms of privacy, they had much more of it in the 19th century than now. But in most other respects, today's celebrity culture remarkably resembles that of 150 years ago. So if you don't like celebrity culture, don't blame the internet. The first part of my talk is focused on the history of celebrity culture. The last third, I'm more than halfway through, will offer a theory that aims to answer the third question I am so often asked. Why do so many people care so much about celebrity culture? But first, let me pause to ask you, do you care about celebrities? Why or why not? Now, if you don't care about or don't care for celebrities, you are in excellent company. Intellectuals love to hate celebrity culture. Despite its popularity, or perhaps because of it, many of celebrity culture's most widely cited scholars, and you see here 5 of the most widely cited books on celebrity, view celebrities and fans as trivial at best, pernicious at worst. Millions of people admire and even envy stars, but most pundits dismiss celebrities as empty ciphers, famous merely for being famous. Even scholars with a more favorable view of celebrities, such as Richard Dyer, whose book Stars is not pictured here, ultimately see celebrities as reinforcing the status quo, which in his view is not a good thing. While a few commentators see fans as helping to create the celebrity culture they consume, Jackie Stacey and Henry Jenkins have been very important in promoting that view, most commentators tend to envision publics as either gullibly imagining that they truly know their idols or as cruelly reveling in their downfalls. The ultimate villain in this bleak tale is almost always an abstraction called the media. Theodor Adorno charged what he called the culture industry with promoting, quote, mass deception and impeding the development of autonomous, independent individuals who judge and decide consciously for themselves. Strong words. By these lights, fans are passive fools, celebrities are deceptively glamorous pawns, media companies are evil puppeteers, and celebrity culture is a zero-sum game in which one and only one party takes all. In the drama of celebrity, I propose a different way of understanding celebrity culture. Instead of seeing it as a binary contest in which one side has all the power and the other has none, I conceive of celebrity culture as a triangular game involving three equally powerful groups: publics, media producers and owners, and celebrities themselves, who are surprisingly absent from much of the academic discussion of celebrity culture. In a minute, I'm going to give you a concrete example, but bear with me as I lay this out somewhat abstractly. In this articulation of how celebrity culture works, all three entities compete and collude to assign value and meaning to renowned individuals and to those who take an interest in them. Sometimes this game ends up reinforcing dominant values, as when a culture elevates a figure such as Pat Boone, who was a bit of a nut in private, but his image was extremely conformist. Often, however, celebrity culture privileges those who elude constraints and defy norms. Here's Lady Gaga wearing a dress made entirely of meat, now preserved in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a jerky. I am not joking. And Sinead O'Connor, many years ago, tearing up a picture of the Pope on live television to protest the abuse of children by people in the Catholic Church. In the game of celebrity, all three players, and here we have them again, have some power to form and execute intentions, to express preferences and pass judgments, and to exercise intelligence and initiative. Each of the three players can create artful representations, interpret them, repurpose them. Most importantly, each requires the others in order to play. Each can resist the others or collaborate with them, and each can, at least for a while, influence, succumb to, or dominate members of the other two groups. So to take an example, when thousands of people gathered outside Kensington Palace in 1997 to mourn Princess Diana, they participated in a media event that was not simply being staged for the public, but also being created by the public. The spontaneous gathering of so many mourners attracted reporters. Their coverage attracted more members of the public, who were commoners seeking to influence the actions of the surviving members of the royal family. For days after Princess Diana died, the media and public wondered if Queen Elizabeth II would appear to greet the London crowds gathered to mourn Princess Di. The contest to define the meaning of Diana's death came after a decades-long tussle over who would define her life, itself a proxy for debates about what it meant to be a woman, a mother, a wife, a member of the elite, and most fundamentally, as is always the case with celebrity, a human being worthy of admiration. The participants in those debates included the many journalists reporting on Diana, often competing with one another for access to her and for the public's interest and attention. Other celebrities in Diana's orbit. How many times has Elton John played Candle in the Wind? And ordinary people who identified for diverse reasons with the story of a very privileged person who nonetheless faced challenges similar to their own. At the center of the struggle to define the princess stood Diana herself, often credited with being a savvy self-presenter who understood contemporary media relations far better than did other members of the royal family, whether using a 1980s photo op to demonstrate that it was safe to touch people with AIDS, or a television interview to reveal that her husband's infidelities had preceded hers. Publics influence media coverage by deciding which media to consume or not consume, by sending letters to editors, posting comments online, or producing old-fashioned applause. Some fans create their own celebrity representations, but most content themselves with collecting and arranging materials produced by others, as in these 19th century scrapbooks hundreds of which still survive in theater archives and represent a really interesting way to recreate how people in the past interacted with newspapers and magazines that were, as we heard earlier, covering celebrities in great detail. Celebrities, too, vary in the degree of control that they can exert over their self-presentation and careers. Some are content to let photographers and journalists define them, while others obsessively craft their own personae and find ways to connect directly with readers and viewers. Media producers, journalists, publicists, photographers, publishers, executives, can position themselves as fans, critics, or kingmakers. Some even become celebrities themselves, as gossip columnists Hedda Hopper and Walter Winchell did in the middle of the 20th century. To the extent that media outlets and platforms themselves also seek to become iconic brands and acquire large, loyal followings, they do not function so very differently from celebrities, in addition to using celebrities to publicize themselves. New media formats, from sound recordings to television to digital social media, have long marketed themselves by forging links with established celebrities who have already made a name for themselves using older media forms. Photography, as we saw earlier, first became popular when commercial studios began to sell images of celebrity royals, politicians, and performers who had already been rendered familiar to the public through press coverage. In the 1890s, companies selling newfangled phonographic cylinders, and a label from one is pictured here, used celebrities to promote their novel product. Early short films similarly attracted audiences by portraying famous royals, politicians, and stage actors. Television, at its inception, featured stars from the radio. In the 21st century, digital platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr each expanded astronomically when pop stars such as Lady Gaga, Katy Perry, Beyoncé, Adele, Rihanna, and Taylor Swift began to use them. Other celebrities, from Ashton Kutcher to Donald Trump, were drawn to Twitter because the relatively new media platform helped them to bypass those standing guard at older ones. During the 2016 presidential campaign, many rightfully decried the free publicity that television and the press gave Trump. But the game of celebrity is not that simple, with established gatekeepers exercising top-down control over who and what they cover. Far from simply using their platforms to advertise Trump, news outlets were using Trump to advertise themselves. Faced with declining circulations, the press latched onto Trump's savvy for galvanizing public attention. Now, my final question for you is if you can think of any examples of celebrities, publics, and the media either competing or colluding, so something where this triangular dynamic is in play. And as you mull that over, let me offer some final examples that illustrate how what I'm calling the drama of celebrity works. While scholars often assign absolute power to the culture industry, to media companies, the biggest celebrities can break a media company's stride in quite significant ways. That is what pop singer Taylor Swift did in 2015 when, with one Tumblr post in which she said, "We don't ask you for free iPhones," she forced Apple to pay royalties to artists featured on its new music platform. Not just to her, but to all artists featured on its new music platform. Only a few weeks ago, singer Rihanna caused the shares of social media platform Snapchat to lose $800 million in value in a single day after she criticized the app for creating a game that had mocked her for having been a victim of intimate partner violence. Rihanna effected this by taking to Instagram to protest Snapchat and to encourage her over 60 million followers to discard and delete the app. Many discussions of celebrity culture assume that journalists and editors alone decide who gets free publicity and what kind of publicity that will be. But celebrities can also quite successfully conceal facts from the public or spin them for the media. Joan Crawford, for example, successfully posed as a doting mother for decades. She was exposed as being something other than that by her daughter, and she went the old-fashioned route, a book. Nor are members of the public uniformly passive consumers. Some are cynical about celebrities, while others push back against the press, as did the armies of believers who stood ready in 2016 to defend pop singer Justin Bieber against even the mildest criticism, only to turn against Bieber himself soon after. All of these examples suggest that we care about celebrity culture not simply because we are interested in celebrities themselves, but because celebrity culture is a suspenseful interactive drama in which we ourselves play a leading role. Because publics, media, and celebrities all have considerable power, these contests are very evenly matched. As a result, their outcomes are not predictable. That unpredictability lends celebrity the drama that keeps millions engaged. Adding to the drama of celebrity is the fact that each of the three players constitutes a diverse and internally fractious group. Media proliferate and borrow from one another, compete. Celebrities are a varied lot, ranging from micro-stars with 50,000 Instagram followers to superstars like Rihanna, who in 2017 had over 84 million Twitter followers. Some celebrities join forces, as film stars Charlie Chaplin, Mary Pickford, Douglas Fairbanks, and director D.W. Griffith did in 1919 when they formed United Artists. Some celebrities compete and get together, as when great athletes compete against one another on different teams, but then join forces on all-star teams, or when actors Sarah Bernhardt and Maude Adams joined forces in 1901 to play the same role on alternating nights. Stars can also change direction and find their meanings altered, as when America's beloved First Lady Jackie Kennedy morphed into America's Scarlet Woman, Jackie O. Of the three players in the triangular game of creating celebrity culture, the public is the most complicated, which is why I, like many scholars, consider it more accurate to use the plural publics. Publics are dynamic, heterogeneous, and unpredictable. They tend not to think as one for very long. Fans can be fickle. Someone might gush about a celebrity in one breath and belittle them in the next. Subcultures peel off from the mainstream and abandon favorites when they become too popular. Niche markets form. Die-hard fans argue amongst themselves, often fiercely, about the best Billy Joel song or who was the cutest Beatle. In 1964, US teenagers voted for Ringo. The drama of celebrity, it was in the newspaper, so it must be true. The drama of celebrity also derives from the fact that publics are genuinely free to ignore celebrity culture. Some of us may feel like captive members of an involuntary public flooded with celebrity factoids we'd prefer to ignore, but we can opt out, and that ability is crucial. Celebrities cannot exist without publics, but publics can and do exist without celebrities. So, to conclude, celebrity results from large numbers of individuals deciding which stars to like, hate, or overlook, and usually the ways in which publics do that is mediated by newspapers, film, and the list goes on, radio, the internet. Because each of those many individuals exercises idiosyncratic tastes, it's not easy to predict how publics will respond from one moment to the next. Marketers and entertainment industries do not make stars, they nominate candidates for stardom. As a journalist observed over a century ago, celebrities are elected by the will of the people. To this day, publics enjoy the drama of celebrity because they are stakeholders, not mere onlookers, who care about the outcome because they help to determine it. The prevalent academic framework for understanding celebrity culture has been commodification theory, which views only one group as wielding power, the capitalists who allegedly manipulate the public into thinking that stars have special qualities and who turn celebrities into objects for sale in order to extract profits and reinforce dominant belief systems and power structures. To this way of thinking, celebrity is an illusion or hoax that critical thinkers must expose, and celebrity culture offers only two antagonistic positions, duper and duped, faker and sucker. This view has been around at least since 1961, when Daniel Boorstin defined a celebrity as, quote, a person who is known for his well-knownness. So that's the original variant on famous for being famous. Not variant, that's the original, and the rest is variant. Boorstin's phrase has acquired an enviable fame of its own, but as definitions go, it is more catchy than accurate. Indeed, its own popularity might be one of the few instances in which its claim about celebrities' lack of substance holds true. As a theory of celebrity, it is steeped in the dualistic model. By Borston's light, public relations firms, and he writes a lot about them, trick most people into thinking that celebrities merit our attention, when in fact they don't really merit our attention. I would say that's a strange claim. The Beatles, Madonna, Audrey Hepburn, Muhammad Ali, Steve Jobs, celebrities all. And all became celebrities because they created memorable songs, gave brilliant performances, were exceptionally beautiful and stylish, had amazing athletic abilities, invented something important, and were willing to work with the media to turn themselves into public icons. Various forms of manipulation, from payola to promoted tweets, do often first push a celebrity or a would-be celebrity into the limelight. But those who stay famous usually remain so thanks to some extraordinary talent, skill, or achievement. To be sure, there are always celebrities who in their day were widely perceived as famous only for being famous. That's an inevitable part now of how we think about celebrity culture and experience it. Kim Kardashian's 19th century forebears included the courtesan known as Skittles, pictured in the center, and professional beauty Lily Langtry. You can figure out who Kim Kardashian is. So. Even these figures, however, fit author Zadie Smith's definition of an artist as someone with an expressive talent that most of us do not have. In Kardashian's case, that talent is a notable ability to promote herself and her products. If anyone could do that, everyone on YouTube would be a millionaire. Many scholars have taken the triviality attacked by Borston to be definitive of celebrity. But because the category of celebrity encompasses everyone from Albert Einstein to Paris Hilton, I prefer the definition with which I began. Celebrities are people known during their lifetimes to more people than could possibly know one another. The biggest celebrities are those known to the largest numbers of people for the longest periods of time, and their history holds the key to a new and improved theory of celebrity culture. Celebrity results from large numbers of individuals deciding which figures to like, hate, or overlook. Publics enjoy the drama of celebrity as participants, not mere onlookers. Members of the public who care about the drama of celebrity, and millions do, care because that drama establishes channels that link publics, media producers, and celebrities themselves, all of whom work together to create the drama of celebrity and to determine its outcomes. Thank you.